Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar of the Openinno Train project. And today we are going to talk about open access, open science, and Horizon 2020 projects. A bit of introduction before. So since this is a webinar organized by RMIT University, we always start our events with the Acknowledgement of Country. So basically with our message that we acknowledge our respect for Australian Indigenous culture. RMIT University is started from Melbourne, so this is a very important thing for RMIT. So RMIT University acknowledged the people of the Wiwurrung and Bunwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nation, who was unceded lands we conduct the business of the university. RMIT University respectfully acknowledges their ancestors and elders, past and present. RMIT also acknowledges the traditional custodians and their ancestors of the lands and waters across Australia where we conduct our business. So, very brief introduction about myself. I'm Massimo Menichinelli. I'm a research fellow at RMIT Europe. I'm also doctoral candidate at Aldo University. Well, actually, I defended a month ago, so I'm already almost finalizing it. So waiting for the final paperwork. Be a doctor in new media from Finland, Aalto Media Lab. I studied also industrial design in Milan, in Polytechnic in Milan, and have 5 years of experience working in European projects and 15 years of experience both in professional practice and research. And here at RMIT Europe, I'm project manager for the Openinno Train Horizon 2020 Marie Curie Rice project. So RMIT Europe, RMIT University. So RMIT University is a global university of design technology enterprise. We have more than 84,000 students and 10,000 staff. Main campuses are in Melbourne, but also 2 in Vietnam and 1 in Barcelona, which is called RMIT Europe. It's more than a campus, is the university hub in Barcelona, so it's the connection from Europe to Australia and Asia, and also there are several partnerships that we have through Asia. So it's really a global initiative, and I'm basically one of the parts of the team from Barcelona. So as I said before, I'm working on Openinno Train project. This is a global network of researchers and industry practitioners across Europe and Australia. And the focus of this network is promoted translational research between university and industry through cooperation of innovation. And the work is done on 4 sectors: fintech, industry 4.0, clean tech, and food tech. So we have several partners from academia and industry in Europe, and also RMIT in Melbourne. From academia, we have PhD, TNO, TUHH, UPC, University of Agder, University of Siena, University of Copenhagen, University of Zagreb, INESTEC, University of Vaasa, TU Graz, and Nofima. In industry, RMIT Europe, because we actually are a company, Merinova, Conchar, ISCN, Rick Carlsberg, Salketo, and Lorit. So this project is a Marie Curie Rice. It's a research and innovation staff exchange. So it's all about research mobility and cooperation between academia and industry, between university and industry. So basically, it's about research mobility for any staff that is linked to research and innovation. So some examples. So what is about research mobility? It's about researchers going on a secondment from, again, university to industry, vice versa. For example, we have Victoria Drabe, PhD researcher at UHH that went to Melbourne for a couple of months 1 year ago. We have Ebo Kwe Giraful, a researcher from University of Vaasa that went from Vaasa to Melbourne 1 year ago. And Trino Orblane, that from Merinova went to Melbourne as well. Or Zoran Krupra, professor from University of Zagreb that came to Barcelona. And many more, just to give you an example. But more on this is openinnotrain.eu. So let's focus on the topic of today. So what is open access? And this is an important topic that we've been discussing in the project, but in research everywhere for a while. So we thought it will be good to have a first webinar about this. Of course, we can extend in the future as well. So first, let's start from the more pragmatic aspects. What is open access in terms of research? And the easiest thing to see is when you see a research article, typically in a journal article, but also conference can be, And when you see that there is the open access orange logo, or that you see the articles released with an open access license, so specifically say that it's open access, typically a Creative Commons license. So from these two details, you understand, okay, this is a journal article, but what is open access? And this is actually much bigger than just saying, well, it's an article with a logo and a specific license. So there are many open access articles and journals. So there is this directory of open access journals, so you can find a lot of them there. Of course, also if you look for articles in Scopus, for example, you can filter and see which are open access. So there are open access is something that you can find in any database about research. This is one good entry point. So what open access is? There are definitions, at least there are two definitions. The first one is the Budapest definition from 2002, which is say by open access to research literature, we mean any research literature that is free available on the public internet, permitting any users to read, download, copy, distribute, print, search, or link the full text. They can also be crawled for indexing, used to data analysis on software, and any more usage. An important thing, the only constraint on reproduction and distribution, and the only role of copyright in this may should be to give authors control over the integrity of their work and the right to be properly acknowledged and cited. Then there is a much longer and detailed definition, the Berlin definition, again from 2003. So as you see, several years ago already. And you say there are two conditions for open access contribution. So the authors and right holders of the contribution should grant to all users a free, irrevocable worldwide right to access to and license to copy, use, distribute, transmit, and display the work. This has to be done publicly, and you can also make derivative works in a digital medium and more. It's important, of course, that completion of the work should include a copy of the permission, what is open access, so that's why we have licensing typically added to, and so on. So of course, these are, if you want more technical description, that goes a bit more into the practice. So there are actually different ways for doing open access in research. So I have an article that is open access. It's not just one way. And this is a color naming system, which is much easier to remember than reading a long definition. So let's go from, let's say, the more open or probably the most structured to the least one. You have the Diamond, Platinum, Open Access. So these are typically journals which publish open access and without charging anything to authors. So the authors freely also, in terms of funding, doesn't have to pay for this. And then we have Gold Open Access. So the publisher makes all articles and the corrected content available, and it's free, but basically requires some costs to the author, of course, so the institution of the authors. Green Open Access is about self-archiving by authors. So basically, the authors publish a copy, typically a preprint, typically the first submitted manuscript version or before the submission version. So it's a draft, and this is hosted on central repository, university repository, or repository archive, and so on. Then they could have a hybrid open access, and this is a bit of gray area because basically it's a mix of open access article and closed access. So that means that a publisher might publish something with open access and something more closed. So it needs to be checked more because there's no clear cut version here. Then we have bronze open access. So the articles are free to read from the publisher, but there is not a specific and clearly identifiable license. So what do you mean? That first you can read the article, but it's not so clear for researchers that what you can do. You can use the article, the data, can you do that? That's not clear. So that's why it's important to be very specific about this. And then we have black open access. This is actually open access, but of course it's not what we will typically talk about because it's basically about unauthorized digital copying of articles, and typically this is a copyright infringement. It's illegal, but there are online platforms that give access to articles in this. So I would say one important aspect, not only one but one that is very important to researchers, that Especially in gold open access, there are fees that the researcher, the institution, or the project or researcher should pay, which are the APC, article processing charges. So this depends on the publisher, depends on the specific journal, but there might be some cost that the basically publisher to the journal charges the author for having the articles open access. I'm showing here you just one example from DPI because they basically break down the amount of cost for each article and basically say, okay, we actually use, how do we use the funding from this cost? So they explain why there should be an APC charge, going from journal publication, editorial fees, marketing, and so on. So sometimes it's well explained why there is APC charges, but sometimes this can be expensive. You can find from most of the publisher also a list of the APC for the specific journals, also different currencies. So this is, for example, one just part that you can see from Elsevier. So you can go and look for journal. So there is not one single way for charging for APC. This is an interesting chart that I found. So basically distribution of the APC fees. So you see actually majority, they're actually brought from $0 to $250. There is a peak at $2,000. So that's actually, that's why it's very common to see that price is probably where the most of the publishing industry converge to. And more expensive APC you see are much less common. Another important aspect, so we saw is the licensing. And while there may be many different types of licensing, for IP, Creative Commons licenses are the most used for open access. So there are several kinds of Creative Commons licenses. What they do is basically they keep the right of the author to be the moral author. So you can still claim, okay, this is my work, personal work, but what they basically say, well, we basically waive the right of stopping redistribution, so they facilitate the open access and so on. There are different types. The first is CC BY is basically the only requirement for whoever access the article is to say that if they post it everywhere else, they have to credit the original article, the original article and the original author, the creator. Then we have the buy share alike, is basic attribution share alike. So basically, anybody who shares this article must credit the original creators. And this is always the default for any Creative Commons. But the same license apply if you create more content from the original article. And these two, they're the ones that really are open. The other ones is more gray because they're actually not completely open. You see, it's probably a cool fall between the hybrid and bronze model, but it's something that you can find many times. So you can have the attribution of commercial, so non-commercial use of the work. Only non-commercial use of the work is permitted. Non-commercial attribution of commercial share alike, so only non-commercial uses of the work permitted, and also anything that is built on top of that must use the same license. Or you can have attribution non-derivative, so no derivatives or adapted work can be created on top of the original one. Or non-commercial and non-derivative, so anybody can copy and redistribute the article, but not for commercial uses, and this cannot be used for creating a new work. Then this is something that is less available in journal, but this is very good, for example, in their use for data. It's the CC0, because basically whenever we talk about Creative Commons licenses, the one that we saw before, we always talk about there is an author right. You still have the author right, and it expires typically after 70 years after the death of the author, it depends on the country. But then we have work that is in public domain. So if you take a book from 200 years ago, it's a public domain. There are no such restrictions. In case you want to release one of your work as public domain, you have to use this license called CC0. It's not enough to say this is public domain, but this is specific license. And this is used a lot, for example, for datasets. And this is another chart about open access article by license. And if you see CC BY is actually the most popular because, yeah, by definition, it's really the more open and really the open one, the open access one. But the second one is non-commercial, non-derivative. So this might be also happening. Or there might be also even custom licenses. So why open access is important now? So, well, actually, just a very brief introduction because there are several trends, at least we can group them in two directions, that got together and basically promoted the idea of open access also in research. And these are emerging approaches to sharing IP or some knowledge, some creative work, as a strategy to better both develop it and exploit it. Roughly, we can say, even if there probably could be one big family, I would say at least we have two different parts of this family. One is the whole development of strategies and work from open source software, which then expanded to open hardware, design, also data, and data led also to both services and application in public sector called open government, and generally about open content and Creative Commons. And this is if you want more technical work on really how to make the content accessible and shareable. And then in terms of innovation management, well, it's a whole trend of open innovation that provided the rationale for how to do it and when to do it. And why it's also very important for researchers in Europe, but not only, because this idea of openness has been since at least 2016 at the core of policies and new initiatives and funding for research. This is a very interesting book that was done in 2016 explaining the strategy for the European Commission. It's called Open Innovation, Open Science, and Open Data World. Because really there are these three directions for the European Commission. One is open innovation, not just in terms of knowledge transfer, but going to open innovation, but also open innovation, what they call a 2.0, more like a user and ecosystem-based version of open innovation. Then there is open science, the idea of opening up the research process. So from using open data, open access article, all online and publicly accessible communication, so science blogs and so on, but also citizen science. We will see open science a bit better later. And the third one is open to the world, because well, you, as you see, as a big part of expenditure on research, it's a very important player. It's the second only after the United States. But it's very important also when we do science and we do research that we connect also globally and find a way for collaborating between open science and open innovation. So that's why there is also this open to the world. And this approach is as the foundational layer of many initiatives from the Commission. So for example, one is the European Open Science Cloud. So this is a technical infrastructure, is a trusted digital platform for scientific community for managing data and making interoperable and shared for all researchers. Another interesting initiative that has been gained momentum in the last year is the Planners. It's basically a discussion of a strategy for pushing open access forward. It's not the only way for doing that. Some people completely agree on this, some people disagree a bit, but what's important is you can find a lot of discussion and definition of what could be open access and how to make it open access a reality quickly. So with the bigger overview, what's the role of open access now in open science and what is called RRI, Responsible Research and Innovation. So open science, again, is a movement akin to open software or open data. It's a movement to make scientific research and its examination accessible to all levels. And this includes not just the publications, open access article, but also all the data, all the software used in research as open source, all the sample, also all the annotation, notebooks, educational resources. So the idea is to make a transparent, accessible knowledge that is shared, developed through collaborative networks. Just a couple of examples, so just to show you why this is actually much bigger than just say, well, it's an online article. It's also, for example, there is a journal of open source software. So if you develop some software for your open science research, you can also publish an article about that, and it's going to be online here as open access. The same goes for hardware. Make, for example, take an example that you create a new kind of hardware, could be a 3D printer or a microscope, and it's released as open source, not really open science way, then you can also create, develop an article that documents this in this journal. We'll briefly make an example of something in the work with some collaborator 5 years ago, because this, again, was already 5 years ago. A lot of things changed, but we did also first example and experiment on doing open science. So we created a survey for understanding what was the state of the maker movement, which was emerging back then, and we focused on Italy, but we documented everything online. So while the whole research is documented on the website, you can download the book, the report that we did. It's a book, so you can download the PDF. It's released under Creative Commons CC BY license. There is also print-on-demand version available that you can buy in case you want to have the paper version. You see the PDF is online. But you have also the metadata of the article as well, released openly, so the bib text for the citation, but also all the data set, of course, clean, anonymized, but they can be downloaded, again, with the CC BY license. And also all the questions and in different formats, especially also for the Lime survey format, the software we use. But the survey itself is open source and it's open science. So you can download, modify, and create your own one. And also the software and the other publications that were done for that are accessible online. The software is basically for analyzing the data and creating charts and other analysis. And this was also uploaded on GitHub, which is the online platform for open source software. So everything that we did all around this project, research project, is open science, going to show the different aspects of open science. Another important aspect, that this is very important European level, because it's a very important topic, which are being several years Horizon 2020 project, is what is called RRI, Responsible Research and Innovation. And I put it together with open science because it's important, because open science is about making everything accessible in research. RRI is basically, if you want, the twin for this, is basically the idea to find the strategies and tools and approaches for managing and launching research processes in a way that take all the work, role, concerns of all stakeholders in mind, and also in a way also that all the effects and impacts are considered when doing research. You know, not the research that starts from scratch, but starting from stakeholders and society. So, for example, there is this RRI tools website, and that clearly displays that. So, really, there are some core elements like RRI is about ethics, science education, public engagement. Again, you see open access. It is about governance and gender equality. And this connects policymakers, research community, civil society organization, business industry, and education community. And this is supposed to reach diverse and inclusive research, open and transparent research, anticipative and reflective approach, and responsive and adaptive approaches to research as well. And you can find several projects. This one, Cisco, is actually RRI projects where I worked some years ago before joining RMIT and working on Openinno Train. And for example, in this case, the focus on this is to use co-design for developing responsible research and innovation with citizens. So they go together with the idea of creating open access and engaging in more citizens and stakeholders and the impact of science. Let's focus now a bit more in detail the role of open access in Horizon 2020 projects. So there is a lot of documentation on the EC website, and especially you will find them in the handbook for Horizon 2020 and the funding intent portal. I will just show some specific parts, but then you have the link for checking into detail better how it works. Open access is super important. It's very important for publication and data in Horizon 2020. And this is done in order to achieve a research that builds on previous research results. So we have improved quality of results as well. To encourage collaboration and avoid duplication of effort, speed up innovation, and involve citizens and society. This is very important. It's also one other important thing that, of course, the Commission considered that there should be no need to pay for information funded from public purse each time it is access or use. So that's why it's important. And that's why basically Open access is based in it's at the core also for the grant agreement for any Horizon 2020 project, so it's compulsory. So here you will see a bit more of the detail of the legal requirements on open access scientific publications. So as you see, under Horizon 2020, each beneficiary must ensure open access to all peer-reviewed scientific publications related to its results. So to meet this requirement, beneficiaries must, at the very least, ensure that any scientific peer-reviewed publication can be read online, downloaded, and printed. Since any further rights, such as the right to copy, distribute, search, link, roll, and mine, make publication more useful, beneficiaries should make every effort to provide as many of these options as possible. So it's not just this requirement, it's also that it's very important for researchers because it will make more impactful and useful their work. An important thing that is about peer-reviewed scientific publication, especially. So what is open access? Again, taking from the Horizon 2020, the Funding and Tenders Handbook. So it's about peer-reviewed scientific research in articles or research data. So at least it's on research article, but also data as well. And as you see, there's also links again to the Budapest Declaration and the Berlin Declaration that we saw before. So they're all linked to this. And for the Commission, there are two main routes to open access here: the green open access and the gold open access. So we saw it before. You know, we have several different ways of doing open access. Well, basically, the diamond, platinum open access is an improved version of gold open access. Of course, it makes totally sense. What the Commission doesn't want is basically hybrid, unclear, or unlegal way of doing open access, you know, the hybrid bronze and black. So one is the green open access, the two routes. So again, the author representative archives, deposits the published article or the final peer-reviewed manuscript in an online repository before, at the same time, or after a publication. It's important that maybe some publisher will require that this open access is done only after an embargo period. Typically, it could be 12 months, could be 24. You know, each publisher will tell you what is it. And gold open access is basically immediately published. Okay. Typically, these are APC fees that should be basically paid by researchers, research universities, research institutes, projects, and could cover, of course, that the funding of the project itself. So for data, again, this is very important to remember this. So as much as possible, it will be good to have open access to research data. So with one chart, we can see, you know, what are the requirements suggested from the Commission. It's important to understand that not everything has to be released publicly. But if you decide to disseminate and share and do publication, they have to be open access. So for example, if you decide to protect research results from European projects, and for example, you want to do patenting and for protection, it doesn't have to be open access. It has to be open access if it's something that you want to disseminate. So if it's public, it has to be open access in publication, but also in research data. So there is also a two-step process for this. Again, we'll go very quickly. You can find more online, but the important thing is that the publication must be stored in repositories, online repository. I will show you a couple of examples later. And then, of course, that in the Funding and Tenders portal, there is basically provided information about whether we use the green open access, the gold open access, and we have a bibliographic metadata that clearly states that the European Union and Horizon 2020 granted funding for this. So some important things to remember. So in Horizon 2020 project, the cost of APC might come from the project budget, but meaning it's tied to the project budget means that, of course, it depends on the budget. It's not just come from that, but it depends on the amount of available budget, how much is the site that is going to be to APC, fees and articles. So if you see, sometimes, you know, one of the most typical way of doing open access with APC is to charge for €2,000, $2,000. So you understand then when you start having more articles, then it could be a lot of funding taken from a research project. So sometimes, of course, there will be restriction decision strategies to be made for that. This for gold open access, but for green open access, this is always a free option. So this is very important that in any case, even if not, you cannot have 20, 10 or more open access, gold open access funded article from European projects. The green open access is always a free option. And most of the publisher, they explain also how to do the green open access, what will be the embargo and so on. And another important thing, not all open access journals charge for RPC. So you have these diamond platinum ones. So always have a look for this because it's definitely possible also to publish in good journals without paying any APC fees. So just to show you a bit more it works in the funding tenders portal. So when you manage a project, and especially the continuous reporting, there is a specific part about publications. And basically in the publication, you have to fill all the data about publication. Typically with the DOI, this is filled automatically. What's important for us here is that basically you have to define if it's available, is the publication available as open access or will be made available? So this is the part that is important for the topic of today. So you can decide, yes, this is green open access. And in this case, it will ask you if there is an embargo and what will be that. So if not, of course, it's 0 months, or it could be 12 and so on. As you see, these are mandatory. And of course, you have to save this a peer review publication or a joint public-private publication. Then if you say, no, this is, so yes, sorry, it's open access, but it's not green, it's gold. You have to report what is being paid from the project budget for the APC. And well, if you click on the no option, it will actually tell you that in Horizon 2020, and specifically in Article 29.2 of the grant agreement, you have to ensure open access to all peer-reviewed scientific publication. So, well, there is the tick for possibility to tick for no, but I always remind that actually this is important. So that's why to always consider the green open access option as well. Very recently, I think 1 month ago, we have been also the notification that the Commission created a new platform for publishing articles. This is called Open Research Europe. And basically, it solves a lot of these issues that we have here. So it doesn't cost to researchers to have open access article. It's very fast. It already has preprint online, and there's an open peer review. It is connected to Horizon 2020. So it basically makes sure that the open access is done well, that open science is done well, but it does not cost. So forget about the €2,000 for an article. And as you see, well, this is going to be launched in March 2021, but I think you can probably already submit now. So when you submit, then, well, there is a check, a pre-publication check. And if so, then the preprint goes already online. So basically, you can already cite it or you can promote it. And then there is a peer review. In this case, it's an open peer review. So the names of the authors are open, and also the reviewers. And then if it's done, well, it's indexed automatically and it goes to repositories as well. So last section, some example platform tools and best practices are important for considering open access. And then we can have a question and answer session. So first thing, there is a very nice book, Open Access by RMIT Press, and the author is Peter Suber, which is not only explain open access in a concise way, but it's also open access itself, so you can access it online and read more about it. Then, and this is more for software and data, but it could be also for articles, any kind of content. This website called choosealicense.com explain the difference between different open source licenses. In any case, it's good to understand why there are different licenses and what each license can give you in terms of permissions, dynamics, and so on. And this is very easy to follow and understand from this. Then also about APCs, also check also what an institution can do for that. I know this is example Valdo, but you should check, it's just an example. Sometimes university or an institution, they have some specific agreements with publishers. So for example, they might have a website where they say, okay, we have some institutional agreements, some discounts, some suggestions, some not. So you may probably find, some specific rules where you can get also some support from organization for the specific publishers. About RRI, as I said before, there was this RRI tools website, rri-tools.eu, which again is a European project. Not only explains what is RRI, but also has a search engine and a database of tools and approaches for RRI. So it's very complete and can support also in a strategic way how to do open access. In terms of platforms, so one very important platform, which is because it's suggested by the Commission, it's Openinno. This is actually started from a European project. So it's an online platform for doing open science and open access. And again, this is free for use. It actually does several things. So its goals are to align policy with stakeholders, to provide open science services, especially about interoperability and data sharing. And therefore also to link research together, especially by establishing common standards. But it's also a good provider of monitoring of open science, of training for open science, or building global bridges and facilitating open innovation. Openinno is also connected to the European Open Science Cloud, we saw before. So it again is part of this whole strategy of open science. And there are a lot of resources for researchers, sorry. So for example, in services, you can find a lot of tools and approaches and other things that can support you in doing open access. And this is not just doing open access, but also if you want to find open access and find state-of-the-art research, you can find it because, again, it's openly accessible here. There is a search engine. So you can search for article and data set by, for example, surname. Or you can also look for a specific project. So for example, you can have a section about a specific Horizon 2020 project. So this is the case, for example, for Openinno Train. As you see, we have 4 publications now. A 5th one is coming soon. And this is important because this Openinno is also already directly linked to the funding and tendency portal. So when you need to do reporting in Horizon 2020, when you have the publication in Openinno, the funding and tendency portal will already suggest you and have the data for some article to add. So it actually helps you a lot to do reporting, but also promoting your research as well. Again, since it has a very big infrastructure for open access, it's good because it can show also statistics of what is open access. And also it creates also an API endpoint service where you can create software or anything that get this data. And you see there are 84,000 open access journals and almost 223,000 publications, but also dataset software and so on. There are also new features for creating specific community for working with other researchers. So for example, there is now also a community for coronavirus disease. So you see there's almost 170,000 publications, but also data, software, and other research. And then in terms of monitoring, for example, you can see overall what is the state of open access and open science in European level for projects funded by the Commission, so European projects, in terms of countries, and which are the countries more active in the years, organization. But also you can see how open access has grown through the years and go and check in a specific year. So it's very good for monitoring how open science and open access has been working. And another very important platform is Zenodo. And this is a platform it's a repository for articles, similar to Openinno. There are interesting things. Itself, it's open source, and also this is hosted by CERN. And it's a very good repository for storing data sets, but also software, publication, presentation. If you have an article or a presentation or software and you want to get a DOI, and you will get a free DOI with Zenodo. Another important thing that you can link Zenodo to Openinno. So if you do that and organize it well, it's very easy. Then if you submit something on Zenodo, then it goes automatically to Openinno into your portal. So for example, you see we have one article from Openinno Train. This is already indexed in OpenAire. It has all the information, so you can access it, and you see statistics. So you see we have a section for Openinno Train. Again, this is connected to OpenAire as well. And these are easy, so you can drag and drop and upload files. You can already basically say, okay, I want it to be part of the Openinno Train community or community for any project. You can see you can upload publication, posters, presentation, data sets, images, video, audio, software, lesson, even a physical object or another. It's important because you will get a DOI for all of this, and again, it goes to the results of a project. So if you don't specify, you will get a DOI, you explain and what is the publication or anything, publication date, title, authors, and with ORCID you can link the authors to this. And here again, you can define what is the license that you're using, open access, embargoed access, or other type of licenses. But if you add also the funding grants, for example, in case you start writing the name of the project, is again also already connected to OpenAire and also to the funding. So this is very good to understand, where the funding is going. So very important and easy to do. If you write software, you can also use Zenodo for having a version of your software that you can then cite in your publication. So again, it's open source on GitHub, but then Zenodo will get you the DOI and a way for citing this. This is a software I developed, for example, myself. So it's something that makes it easier also to document and cite any open science. Last tool I'm sharing, there is this journal checker tool that this is part of the Plan S. So you can check if a journal fund an institution, how they fare with the Plan S for making open science possible. I think it's time for question and answer. So let's just already thank you.